Now, rape victims pressured to withdraw their allegations. Figures on sexual violence fiddled to meet government targets. Police handling of rape cases has been seriously called into question in recent months. But a national police campaign launches next week to encourage victims to come forward, yet also to be realistic about the chances of securing a prosecution. Rape convictions are at an all-time high. In the last year, nearly 3,700 rape prosecutions were brought, with 63.2% resulting in convictions. And that's a 5.5% increase since 2008. But more than a third of cases prosecuted still don't result in a conviction. Well, in a moment, I'll be talking to the officer in charge of that campaign. But first, we've been to meet two women who both survived rape with very different experiences of the police.
Jordan Hart was just 15 when she was walking home late at night and was raped at knife point by a total stranger.
He followed me. He wasn't just there that he seen me and he grabbed me. He was planning as he was following me. He put a knife to my throat and he dragged me in the car, and my mate was screaming. But there was nothing we could do, and I didn't want to be killed, so I just went along with it.
3 years later, she's agreed to waive her right to anonymity to talk to us about her experience.
Well, people didn't believe me, so I think I just wanted to push that people, that it did happen to me, and to push to other people that if it has happened to you, then you should go get help, because if you don't have any help, then you'll always be by yourself and it could come out worse in the end. Like, some people can go through other traumas and need to have more counselling. People can go crazy, people might want to be on their own.
She says the police supported her every step of the way.
Because there's always a lot of support and help from the police that they give you, so you're not going through it alone like how you did when that incident happened. You're going through it with a team of other people that are standing strong by you, and they've collected every single bit of evidence to try and help you fight your case.
But she admits that even though she gave evidence behind a screen, the court case was traumatic.
It is very hard, like when you get their defence, like they try to say that you're lying and stuff like that, so you have to try and explain and prove that you wasn't lying, because they can be very tough on you, and it's like really hard to try and get your point across, and you can get very frustrated. Like when I was in the court case and like they was trying to defend for him, obviously, like I got really frustrated, and it makes you want to cry, and because it's like no one's listening to you and you're having to go through over again. When they was asking me, they come down very hard on that, because it's my word against his, and you wouldn't know who's telling the truth.
Jordan's attacker was jailed for 11 years. But she might never have been raped if other women he attacked before her had gone to the police.
There was, I think, 3 other women. But if they would have said something, then it would have prevented from happening to me.
So that they got raped before you?
Yeah.
How do you feel about that? Because
it made me feel angry, because they could have stopped it from happening to me, because obviously they were older, they were women, I was a child. So I've done it to stop it from happening to people too younger than me. They should have been doing it as well. But I suppose in that state of mind, when you're worried and you're scared, or you might be embarrassed, or they might not want people to know about it, I suppose in a way I can understand.
We can't identify the police officer who oversaw the case because of her work with other vulnerable women. But Jordan credits her with transforming her life.
She helped me prepare for court and be strong-minded, and without her I probably wouldn't have been able to get through it.
But by no means all rape victims have such a positive attitude towards the police. Mary, which is not her real name, says she was raped last August by a former partner at home.
We'd been in separate bedrooms for a month, during which he was finding accommodation. I went to bed as usual in my own bed, on my own, and I woke in the middle of the night to find him having sex with me.
She immediately contacted police, but despite putting herself through a traumatic interview process, she says she felt unsupported by officers.
When I got the records relating to what the police had recorded, it was nothing like the interview that we'd had. It was a complete distortion. They'd clearly chosen to disbelieve me.
Following an official complaint from Mary, Surrey police have admitted they handled her case wrongly and insist improved procedures have been put in place.
I was doing relatively well with the effect of the rape, but when I discovered that the very people who were supposed to protect me had actually betrayed me in this dreadful way, my distress just escalated.
Well, joining me now is Deputy Assistant Commissioner Martin Hewitt, who's in charge of policing for adult sex offences. The sad truth is that Mary is not alone, is she? Because, earlier this year, the Southwark Sex Crime Unit emerged that they were pressuring rape victims to say they hadn't actually been raped, that it was actually consensual sex. And then just earlier this month, there were 2 officers up in front of MPs who said that figures were repeatedly fiddled by police forces to meet government targets.
I think those two films, and firstly to say how brave of both of those women to actually talk in the way they have about what are very traumatic incidents, illustrate perfectly why I'm so passionate about the work that we are doing. Every time that a mistake is made by the police, and clearly mistakes are made in rape investigations, that affects public confidence and it affects the likelihood of victims coming forward and talking to us. The campaign that we're running is really to raise and get out there and say that we need women to come forward, because the sad fact, if you look at all the academic research, it's probably about 20% of victims who have actually come forward, and we need more people to come forward for a number of reasons.
But too many mistakes made by police, would you accept that?
I think every mistake is too much, because this is such a psychologically and emotionally damaging crime. But I think when you look at the scale of investigation of rape, we've made incredible steps forward working with those groups who support victims to become survivors, and I think we have made some real steps. And as Jordan said in that in the VT there, the officer that looked after her, we have those officers around the country, but it is always very bad when one of those cases goes wrong, and I'm very worried about the damage it causes to confidence of victims.
But confidence has been really badly undermined by this business of no criming, when rape crimes are removed from the official record and police say, well, actually no crime was committed after all. I mean, in some parts of the country, nearly 30% of rapes are no crimed.
Yeah. I mean, that's an issue that we are looking at very, very closely. No crime is a legitimate mechanism within crime reporting, but we have to be absolutely certain that when that decision is taken, it's the right decision. We must eradicate any sense that victims are, in some sense, pushed away from reporting, and we have to have real clear scrutiny about no criming to make sure that's done properly. And to give you an example, in London we bring in partners and support groups in challenge panels to look at those occasions where we do no crime, and we are currently looking at the feasibility of how we even further reduce the number of times that we use that.
You're calling in this campaign for an open and honest conversation about how difficult it is to prosecute rape claims, but is that in some sense sort of covering up your embarrassment that a third of rapes don't end up in conviction?
No, it's not at all covering up embarrassment. I mean, the court process is there to decide on guilt or otherwise, and it was interesting, Jordan in her film brought out the point that this comes down often to consent issue, and it's one person's word against another. So these are complex cases to take through the criminal justice system. But equally, we're working really closely with the Crown Prosecution Service to try and identify ways that we can make that process better for victims.
Well, obviously, one of the key things you've got to focus on is preventing rape occurring in the first place. Do you think, in your position, that the prevalence of online porn is in some ways making rape more of a problem?
I think it's difficult to make a direct correlation between the two. What I would say, though, I think, and what concerns me about access to pornography, particularly in young people, is the way that it impacts their view of relationships and of sex. And the piece that your show did on I think Tuesday or Wednesday after the Children's Commissioner's report, I thought was quite striking, the attitudes of the young people in that piece around how they viewed consent and those issues. So I think there is an issue for us in terms of how it's making young people view sexual relationships, how it's making boys view girls, and that's part of that broader debate that I think we need to have as a society to deal with these issues.
Martin Hewitt, thank you very much for joining us.